sometimes there's gonna be a conflict there because you're like, okay, someone else created that system. You know, it's been there, and other people have done more than you under more stress than you have.
I mean, I think it's a beautiful way to start this. What up, yo? This is Chris from Blackland Ownership and Brooklyn Wildlife. I'm here with the homie Rob. You want to introduce yourself?
Greetings.
Yeah, what up?
Rob Lee Visuals.
Yes, and this is Just For My People, podcast brought to you straight here at Gamba. Make sure everything... Oh, I'm not recording. We gotta do that again.
But does the audio record from the camera?
Yeah, that also.
Nice.
Hold on, what was the last... Because you were going to... What were you just saying, though?
Let's just start it.
I know, but there was something you were... what was the...
I was just thinking about society, like, you know, the systems that...
and the comparison. All right, good.
Yeah, there should be... It's up to you. Like, there should be no comparisons, you know, like basketball and all that shit, because each generation is different and can never be compared to a previous or thereafter.
But when you were saying that there are people who have done things of such a large magnitude that when other folks say they have done certain things, it's kind of inconsequential. I want to remember that.
And that's ego. That's sometimes I guess that's in the comparison. If we're going to do comparisons.
All right, good. All right, we are rolling. Good. All right, what up, y'all? It's Chris Carr from Brooklyn Wildlife, Blackland Ownership, and this is Just For My People. Today's guest is...
Rob Lee from Rob Lee Visual, Black Hole TV.
All right, bet. And for people who are unfamiliar with this podcast and discussion series, I am not interviewing the homie. We're just having a conversation. And I want people to know that I purposely bring on folks that may not share the same opinion as I do, but it's all out of love. And the point is to get into real topics. Neither one of us has some media training person telling us what to say or do. And I think to give space, in this particular case, definitely for young black men to share thoughts, emotions, feelings, ideas about a variety of subjects. So welcome on, my friend.
Glad to be here. Glad to engage.
Good. So before we get into the depths of it, can you give people a brief understanding of who you are and like what you're about? Not necessarily what you do for a job. You can include that, but you know, a bit more.
Passion to life is to continue to grow, explore. I'm an artist, a creative entrepreneur. So I try to use creativity to gain resources. And I'm a thinker. I'm a dreamer. I'm a rebel. I'm a separatist. I try to separate. I want to create, continue to create. I've been born a consumer and I had to reprogram myself to be a producer. And we're just enjoying the life. I enjoy, engaging with Chris Carr and, doing things that I've never done before. Eating apples straight off a tree, and not cleaning them, just eating them.
Yeah. So, for folks that don't know, like Rob, maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, I guess during the pandemic, went down to Trinidad.
Well, I go to Trinidad every year since 2016 because my mother is of Trinidad descent, and I just go for the carnival, and that's like a rite of passage for like people who just born of Caribbean descent. They go for the carnival, but I went for like a deeper training, learning, understanding of life. I just experiment with my life. You know that we all do as artists. Anyone who wants to be an artist, you're experimenting. You're saying you're not taking that road that is planned out for you. Or this is what I believe. You're just going a different route and just creating it and living it as you go.
And then, so you've been going down there, you end up spending time there during pandemic, you then travel, went to Africa, you spent a fair amount of time outside of the U.S. And coming back to the U.S., when you're thinking of like the system that is, and when you look at like the institutions that are in place, what stood out to you? Like, what did you notice?
I mean, to give some back though, I've been traveling out the country. Like, that was my 3rd time going to Africa. So once you just start traveling, been to Europe, once you go to London and Paris and all these places, and you be like, now you realize New York is a baby. We're the newest of all. Like, everything is old back there. Wi-Fi don't even work in some of the buildings because it was made of real stone and cobble, you know? So it just changed my mind as a history and political science major, as a historian. I just realized like anybody could create a new place, a New York City, a new Amsterdam, new this, new that. And the peasants, the poor people, the pilgrims, anybody who's being oppressed or objectified and wants more in life could be migrated or can migrate or could be an immigrant and come to this new place of new ideology and create a new city, create a new system. So that was one thing that just came to me as an artist, like traveling and being an artist and traveling. And that's really what I realized, like capitalism and off-grid living. And then really you realize indigenous. This was what it is. Like, yo, indigenous living, European ideologies, technology, fast-forward thinking, instant gratification, or just indigenous living off the land, living like many tribes all across the world do, in harmony with nature.
I mean, so what does that look like for you in the sense of people say indigenous, people will say like how we used to live? Like, what are things for you that stand out or like that are in practice that like...
I mean, it all depends your knowledge and your history, because people think history started for black people like 1865, you know, really as slaves, as, you know, that. So some people, like I just saw the documentary High Off the Hog, and there's this guy really enforcing you should live like how your ancestors and cook food. He was cooking the food on the ground with coal, and he grew his own food, and he had a little shack. And, you know, that inspired me too. And I was like, yeah, that's dope. You know, and I did some of that. But then if you take it back to indigenous times, you know, living in a tropical place, because at one time maybe the people of darker melanated skin lived in really a warm climate place. Yes. So that would be a different environment where you wouldn't need what somewhere where it had different seasons would need. So that's really why Trinidad and Tobago not only became a rite of passage and a place my mother was, place to go for the carnival, it became like an experiment. Like you could live off the land. So I started to be a bushman. And for me, every time I came back to New York City, I realized I had to pay for everything. But sometimes when I was in community and I did the right things and I lived in the bush, I didn't have to pay for anything. You know, it just took labor, building community, reasoning with your neighbor, give and take.
So for folks that don't know, can you explain what you mean by bushman?
I mean, like, bushman is a term, just a term that people use for people who live off the land.
Oh, it's mine. You know we mad professional in here.
I gotta take this call. It's right. Melanie Charles. Greetings, Melanie. Yeah. Interrupt the flow, Chris.
We good.
Is it still recording?
I just restarted it. All right, yeah, so explain bushman.
It's just a term that people use for...
But doesn't mean you're like living in the woods. Like you built a house for yourself.
I mean, no, like... even before building a house, bushman, you know, someone who goes to... living in the bush, somewhere where lots of grass grows, you know, and there's no infrastructure. It could be the same term as off-grid. Okay. You know, someone who, you know, off-grid, bushman. It's the Caribbean version. I think off-grid would be the American version.
Okay, and then in doing that experience, like, what did you kind of, what was your setup?
Yo, it was real minimalist. Even like the Japanese, because, you know, I'm trying to see the whole world. Like, I'm influenced by so many different cultures. And I started reading and watching short videos about minimalists. And I was like, and then this all just spoke to my heart, because I was like, man, these are the things my ancestors practiced. This is my shit, you know? And I felt like I was just being rebranded something that I was originally. And they told me that, oh, I'm not civilized that way. You have to be living like this. through colonization, through, really it was the conquest of Europeans for Christianity or whatever religion at the time, either Muslim, whatever, we don't know. So many different wars have been fought throughout time. But I'm just saying, like, something felt like, in the essence of it, people could just live life free. And, being an artist too now was what you did for enjoyment. Because if you had the garden where the food was there and, you had everything, you did your work to get your food, what did you do for your pleasure, for your community? You knew how to do a drum, maybe, you know how to make music with a flute, maybe, or something. And that was the culture that was being created, the work and pleasure balance in society, in communities, through living in indigenous lands and stuff like that. That was my theory.
All right, so I think in order for me to get into some of this stuff, I probably want to break it down into some particular questions. And so one would be about, like, your view of cosmology. Like, first, how does the world work? Because you mentioned Christianity being tied to colonialism. So would you say you're a Christian or have a religious belief?
I would say I had been brought up in a system where everything was introduced to me. And I had to sit through sessions of everything, from Muslim sessions to Christianity on Baptist level sessions and Jehovah's Witness sessions to, even whatever, like just searching. You would find sessions later often in my life is more now Indian with yoga and meditation and those type of sessions and finding spirituality, even African identity like Yoruba and Santa Maria, those type of sessions. When I say sessions, gatherings, information, yeah. So
do you don't have a singular then belief?
That's the crazy thing. Like, that's really what it is. Like, I don't believe, I know, and I see, and when I was younger, I believed, like, I believe at one time, people believe God is a white man on a horse coming down. Like, people believe that. So we believe whatever we're told.
Well, how do you attach then, kind of, at least in the U.S., colonialism to then how you experience Christianity?
Now, when we gather like this word colonialism, the first thing in the U.S. that comes to me as a history and what I learned going through school, because remember, I just went through school like everybody else, is the 13 colonies, and being sold this idea that people came here because they wanted to have their own way of life. They didn't want to live under the rule of England.
Right.
So this is the history that we've been told. And also the history that we've been told is that they slaughtered the indigenous people that lived here. First, the indigenous people made friends with them because they could not survive. And then through, trades and deals, because these people have different ideologies, it was a misunderstanding of the land. Like, a lot of things are being told to you. You don't know for say yourself. You're just reading books. You're getting information from here, from there. So how they say that, they sold Manhattan for beans and stuff like that. Or how, like, on our side, they say, like, we cannot sell you the land. The land is here. I don't own the land, There's always been this ideology of Europeans having to have control. And in my mind, Europeans have to have control and conquest of land, and another side of people who just understand that we are just here, we're just supposed to take care of the land. And so that was the first thing that came to me when I understood these 13 colonies and these people migrating from one place to another. So that's really how I think of colonization. It's like one group of people forcing their ideology on another group and changing the landscape, changing the environment, changing society to fit their needs.
And you think like Christianity or religion has been a tool in that process?
I mean, that's what I believe. Yeah, I think Christianity was a tool, or their right. It was what made them believe they had the right to do it, because they were bringing this tool to these people to civilize them.
Well, no, I mean, I'm probably in the minority of people that don't necessarily believe the American mythology of the Puritans were seeking religious freedom. If you look at it, depending on who you read, the Pilgrims and Puritans were two Protestant groups that were breaking off. And John Calvin started the Calvinists, Martin Luther started the Lutherans. And I believe the Pilgrims were Lutheran and the Puritans were Calvinists and were far more strict. And these are the folks that they wrote about in the Crucible, that once they got to the U.S., they drowned their kids to try to prove they were witches or not. And like, you couldn't do that in Europe anymore. And basically, they weren't seeking just religious freedom. They were seeking an ability to be authoritarian in a way that you could no longer be in Europe following the religious wars. And the U.S. was also a prison colony, much like Australia. It was like, you go to the U.S. or you go to jail here. And so our early colonial envoys, I don't think, have been properly represented historically. And so I think the idea of the missionaries come or the military, but they work together, is a definite component of how America started. And when you look at the monotheistic religions, for the most part, have this God that's all powerful that will punish you, and this kind of notion of paternalism, and this notion of like, you need God, or you got God, then the priest needs God, you need the priest, and the family needs the father. And they all kind of work together. Now, where I get my head all screwed around is that one of the earliest Christian churches is in Ethiopia. So then, is Christianity the white man's religion? Well, at a base level, no, but the way it was introduced to black people in America, it sounds like imposition and colonial process. And I also say that like, I don't know how the hell humans got here, how the world started. I'm in the boat of, none of it makes sense, yet it all makes sense to me. But I ask about your cosmological belief, or like how you look at just being in the world, because I think morality stems from that. I think decision making about what's important stems from that. And so for you, if it's not a particular religion or or dogma, where do you draw your ideas of morality or your ideas of how to behave with other humans, how to interact in society?
Morals, yeah. Values, norms. Those things were introduced later on in life. I think I behaved as my father and mother told me to behave. And it was discipline. Like, you follow the rules. Like, as most middle-class black people, it was discipline. You follow the rules. You respect your elders growing up. I was always a good boy, always a good boy, respected my elders. And you ask anybody in the streets or anybody who knows me, I'm all about respecting people. Now, did I talk back? Yeah. But then you was just talking, I guess,
Well, then where did you, or how do you now understand your moral sense? Like, where does that derive from?
This is where now I just be like free will, like, I still value, respect everybody on earth. I think everyone deserves some type of level of respect. I just understand people. I don't know. I guess I judge people too much. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to waste my time. And I know that I'm young. I believe in systems. I know that they want the young people to work and enjoy their riches later on in life. Similar to like, Christianity or anybody selling you this heaven. Like, you'll get your riches later. So you have to be smart with just doing anything in life so that you put in the work you get, you reap what you sow. Because sometimes you won't reap what you sow in anything that you do. You'll be taken advantage of.
Well, I mean, I guess like when you're talking about, in our private conversations, we've talked about not social justice as a political term, but the idea of just like things that are not righteous or things that are like bad for humanity or that you would like to see change in society. Where do you get that sense from? Or like what, you know what I'm saying?
That comes from, I guess that was also instilled in me and my parents, them trying to be Black Panthers and Rastafarians, and even me myself understanding what this Rasta lifestyle, or wearing locks, or being natural, or being indigenous, just searching for more answers to having passion to life and to live and not be materialistic. So I feel like definitely if I was going to be on that type of moral code, you're supposed to be living with harmony with nature, and you're supposed to be working for yourself, or doing as much as you can for yourself, and living as much like the Orthodox Jews, or living like the Amish, since we could bring in conversations like this. Is like, I really do idolize those communities. I'm not idolized, but I honor and I look at those communities, but sometimes it's hard. It's because it's like, wow. But then I think back and I just look at the history and I look at Reconstruction for Black people. It's like, we had communities like that too.
Well, I mean, the notion that society doesn't always move forward per se. That is not a thing of saying because we do it now or because there are advancements in technology, things are like better for people. I find it's interesting how people are able to maintain traditional practices while being around people that don't. So I see the Amish, like they're kind of separated in a certain way. They tend to be in rural areas, but they definitely have their own kind of community. Being in Brooklyn and New York, it's amazed me seeing like the Hasids, and it's not just like Orthodox folks, but like whole area where it's like Hasidim. And I'd never experienced that, like on any scale growing up in DC or living in Atlanta. And it fascinated me that you can be in New York City and somehow raise your child so that they'll continue a pattern of behavior or ways of practices that some would say have lasted for 2,000 years, but definitely have lasted for 100, 150 years. And how do you pull that off? Because I wonder, like, as a Black community, what do we have to do to circle the wagons, or what do we have to do in order to stop caring about what outside communities think about us, what outside communities want for us, and do what's best for us?
I mean, just the identity of what Black is and who Black is up for discussion, because as we travel and you understand, like, right now they could say you're a Caribbean Black. Someone who's dark melanated could be Caribbean Black. You could also be from the continent of Africa and be Black. Now you could be from London and be a British Black. And then you could be from the Americas, New York City, and be an American Black. And those are four distinct, different type of mentalities and identities that people just hold harder, hold to heart. So, and they all want something different. So we have to find common ground throughout anybody who's, I guess, I don't know.
Well, for you,
me,
how do you define Black?
And I don't even use Black, because I think back. I'm a historian. I think back at one time we were Negro. Look how many times they changed that title of who we are. So
what do you use when you... Hold on, you use the N-word, but you don't use Black?
I use everything. That's the thing, too. That's the problem with society. That's the problem with society. What do... I use I use what's important for the environment. Like, if I'm on the corner with the homies... Like, I'm definitely doing whatever feels good. But also, all my friends know, I'll be like, yeah, we gotta do this, we gotta Black power, blah, 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 At the same time, we like fried chicken too, all that bullshit, But life is good because you open my eyes to new things, with land ownership, with nature.
I think it's something that I'd like to understand more. It's like how we even understand what the community is going to be, right? So when I say Black, I'm old enough to be like, look, my view of Pan-Africanism is people of the African diaspora. And so there are going to be some Arab people that other folks wouldn't include. I will. There are going to be some folks that speak Spanish or speak Portuguese that other folks wouldn't include. I will. There are going to be some indigenous groups, because I am one of those people that thinks Africans came here before, the Europeans. I'm definitely not saying all the indigenous people here are like African indigenous, but I'm also not one of the people that says all the Africans came as slaves and post 1600. So
that's big, bro, because I was over there and I was telling them that, some people believe there's a group of us that left before the whole enslavement and we traveled and settled colonies, and some of them didn't believe that over there, So
it makes sense.
Yeah, but for you, and that's why I'm saying you're creating a new system. Because even this whole thing of letting Arabs in and people who speak Portuguese in, you're not told that whole story from the regular basic education that we're being given in public school or anything in America.
I think I got it from almost the opposite misinformation, where old black people were like, if you even kind of black, you're black. If you'll accept it,
yeah,
you get it. So a Tiger Woods, you black, okay, cool.
Yeah.
There's people who there's Panamanians who might be like, I'm not black, I'm Panamanian. People in my family be like, you see this motherfucker's afro?
Yeah.
That N-word's black. And so I don't think that's also an accurate way to approach how humans are, to use these blanket terms. Black and white are fake. I definitely am a firm believer that these are constructs. Totally. Social constructs, that words that were developed by people with the goal of mistreating other people. So I don't even know how to not use it in explaining certain social processes, but I do understand that it's not monolithic. Like me saying us as black people, us as Pan-Africans, the only, I think, common experience we have is having to deal with the consequences of colonialism or the consequences of white supremacist hegemony. But that doesn't look the same way everywhere. The way it affects people isn't the same way everywhere. So I definitely don't think you're going to get the however many hundreds of millions, if not billions, of people of African descent, because if you include continent Africa, of African descent, to have a similar experience, all want the same things.
Exactly.
But I do think what would have happened if the colonists didn't snatch people up, murder a whole bunch of folks, create nuclear weapons question is important.
I mean, I don't think none of that matters. I think what matters is the city. Because even so, New York City, I've lived in New York City my whole life. And so all I really know is city life. And rural, that's why I say you open my eyes to in nature. But I went on a search for myself, but you really did it. You got the spot. And I'm like, yes. But then I saw where the balance, because your whole life you were created by default in this system, you really don't know no other way to live, right? But you have this yearning to want to live another way, but yet you're fearful of just putting yourself out there and living that other way. You want to go back and forth. You need a balance between back and forth of city life, being in a metropolitan like New York City, and then having something in rural area where you can get in touch with nature, create something from scratch, bring it to the city to sell, develop some sustainability. And that's really what I realized too about this whole world we're living in, that these Europeans, that anybody who looks at history, they realize that, it's about taking natural resources from the earth, creating something from it that people want. Now that there's this billions of people on the earth, right?
Yeah.
The world is too big.
Well, that's the thing. I in thinking about being in nature, something that's, I think, different than how humans used to live in nature is now you're still isolated. When I'm in a city, I like the fact that there's so many people around, there's so many conversations I can have and participate in. When I'm in more rural areas, everything's spaced out, which is dope. But I think in order for humans to have survived in nature, we were together. And so it's odd that in an area where you actually need more people, like in the city, I can actually get a lot of things done by myself. I can go to a store, I can buy it, I can whatever else. But in nature, you need people to help you carry stuff. You need people to help with the farming. You need people. And in our kind of setup, in rural America and in suburban America, things are so spaced out that you don't have that community, and it's like kind of lonely, and it's weird to be in nature where you have such connectivity while having a sense of separation. And so I wonder what a model for me I've been trying to think is like how to commune with people while enjoying the space and openness of nature. Like I wouldn't want these apartment buildings out next to our trailer, but also old folks have so little to do out there because like they're not on a property compound with 7 families. It's one house here, 3 acres over, another house there, 2 acres over another. And I think in the past people was like, no, they were compounds. Like it was like there may have been 100 acres of property used, but they were families and people seeing each other, you know. But I'm gonna check this to make sure.
Yo,
the video cut.
at what?
I'm not sure how far.
We got the audio. And we can edit it. But definitely, man.
I ran out of memory. Hold on. One last section, you felt good. All right. Check 3. Okay.
And we're back.
All right. So for our final section,
Yes. Because we were all over the place.
it is good. I want people to understand how the mind works. What is the future looking like in a society for black men?
I ain't gonna lie. It touches on everything we've been talking about. One, we do need to find better connections to the elders and the people who laid the foundation for life to be easier for us. I am 100% in agreement that everything I have came on the shoulders of those that came before me. So I do feel like a lot of my life is incorporated into this ancestral worship, honoring the ancestors, praising the ancestors. And so moving forward, I think a rites of passage, something has to be created. I think we have to go back to being producers, less consumers, and producing more than just entertainment, producing more than just music.
Like, what are some examples, or what are some things you're thinking?
You know, off the top of my brain, I would say producing systems that people want to follow, which goes in parallel with entertainment and stuff, because we create dance crazes that people love, you know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, there's no reason for us to not be able to create, like, I don't know, a system, some type of ideology that people, a business, a software, you know, a startup, you know, anything. can be created. And what you created, black land ownership, you know, I
what
love
are the
that
things
shit.
that are important to you? Like when you're thinking, one of the first things I would think is like produce your own food. Like if there's any way to get out of letting other people feed you, that would be important. So yes, sir.
No. I'm just like, yo, don't we need land to like? I live in a shoebox in the sky.
Tell me more.
You know what I'm saying? That's where my mind is like. Honestly, because I've so been involved in this New York City lifestyle, I forgot or I was unaware that real life happens with land and not in skyscrapers and not in a city that is made of concrete. So now some of us have not been preparing to financially be able to get land anywhere because now the cost of land has skies. So it's like sometimes I even feel like a hamster on a wheel. Like I'm just on this wheel. And yes, I do put stuff aside, but then things happen like the pandemic, where it's like something you have to start all over again from scratch, and we all do. And then so you're back on the hamster on the wheel. And I just feel like I'm catching my bearings after the pandemic, going to Africa, coming back, feeling like, okay, where do I really want to be? Where do I find myself? Because the system is the same everywhere. You need some type of, you either need community and people to believe in you, or you need that currency in order to get land somewhere. What I did in Trinidad was special. It was, you know, it's a rites of passage for people who are taking that life.
I mean, I think there are partnerships that are available,
Yes.
or there are things people can do initially to start learning how to cultivate or work with plants or grow food. The how to get land question is a priorities question. I'm running into a serious issue of like, are we lying to ourselves about what's important to us? Are we lying to ourselves about our discipline? Are we lying to ourselves about what we're willing or unwilling to do? And I know that like the majority of my adult life, I had no interest in owning land. I thought it was a trap. It would keep me stuck taking care of it, because that's what I was told. Like people acted like having a house, oh, it means you have property taxes. Oh, you got to spend all your time fixing the house. Oh, people do this and that. It's so difficult. And don't even mention owning a rental property or like being like running a business or being an entrepreneur where you rent out space. And my family, people look at that like, oh my God, go work for the government, go work for a law firm, go be a teacher, go be an engineer, like whatever. Like you buy your house, it's for you. Don't let other people stay there unless they're your cousin or your aunt or your nephew or their friend, and you know then their dog can crap all over the floor. Madness. But anyway, the notion of like go get land somewhere, it was not sell off our family lands. It's a hassle, and you know bourgeois black folks being like we left the country on purpose. You know, like we out here for a reason in DC. Like I got air conditioning in the office, in the car, and the house.
Fake air.
Like we are here for that. You know, I don't sweat. I don't go outside, and so I think a major question is there a reason as a society we aren't pushed more to spend time in nature, to involve ourselves in physical labor, to be uncomfortable, to not seek an office, to not seek convenience. Well, yeah, because then you can sell a whole lot of stuff that solves those problems. I think convenience and profit and the elements of capitalism are very strong in like our starting point. Like when you mentioned systems earlier, that it got to a point of it doesn't make sense anymore. Like now that I'm so involved in capitalism that when I look at what my money does, I'm like, wait, y'all charging me $19 for grapes? We had grapes growing off the vine in my backyard, bro. You know, and so when I think, well, damn, what should I spend money on?
Yeah.
It hit me a number of years ago, buy the land. Because all the other stuff isn't worth the same thing over time that I can afford. I'm going to use it, you know, or mess it up or destroy it by using, you know, I buy a car, it depreciates. I use it, I run it in the ground. You buy people that do drugs or drink alcohol, you buy it, it's gone. And you spend a lot of money on it, you know. So when I think of what can people do to get land, it would require discipline, but I never had a pair of Jordans. There are people who buy Jordans once every 3 months. in the course of a year, that's however many $100. I buy coffee every day, $6. Or not coffee, I quit drinking coffee, but like I have tea. That's $6, and I sometimes get a juice. So between the two things, two items, that's $12. In a month, $300 something. In a year, over $3,000. So if I cut out shoes, alcohol, weed, and coffee, right there, that's half on going up on something with somebody in 1 year. If I do that just for 1 year, and I don't smoke cigarettes, like I quit cigarettes,
you're good.
Right there, we've just saved $5,000 or $6,000. You get $5,000 or $6,000. We now have 20% on a very, very, very inexpensive property.
And it goes back to what you're saying, that discipline of these lifestyles that we live in New York City. Because really, New York City is a coping method too. Like, we need the cigarettes to cope. We need the weed. We need the liquor. We need to go at least to the club at least once a week. We gotta go to, we worked all week. We can't have a good time. We gotta have a good time, right? Like,
yes.
So that's the city trap, and it does take a period. That's why the pandemic was a blessing, maybe, right? Like, it forced some people to sit still and not be able to do anything, and they saw that they could do something else with their time. Like me, I read books and did stuff, and like I understood, like, yo, yeah.
Well, you made a lifestyle change also.
100% lifestyle change.
Like, you lost a bunch of weight, you start working out a bunch. Like, what?
Yo, honestly, I could say, look at myself and look in the camera and be like, I was scared. I was like, look what's happening to the world. This is what all the old Rasta men were talking about. Babylon is falling, like, you know, like the trumpets are sounding, like, and honestly, I was in an environment where everybody was talking like that, like, yo, America's gonna fall, it's here. This is what they was talking about, the mark of the beast. You know, it was that little bit of thinking going on. But then after a while, that all calmed down and people were just like, it's like the Spanish flu. It's like this, it's like that. So there was a whole time none of us knew what to do, because at the end of the day, everyone had to isolate. You know, I was like really isolated, and so
you were in Trinidad.
I was in Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay.
At the time of the pandemic, I actually was in Tobago.
Okay.
So it was like, it could have been an ideal spot because I was in the beach house. You know, because during my travels to Trinidad, what I usually do is go to the carnival, and then I try to find a way to go to Tobago and stay by the beach and just go back to America. And that's really like my vacation. Because even so, if you live in America and you work, you get maybe a month off, you know, for vacation. So people just try to get their month during Carnival. And so I was already like living the life of like, yeah, I just work in America, I get this little month off, and I do what I do in Trinidad. And that's really all I did, you know, for a long time. From 2016, didn't go 17, 18, 19, and then 20. Pandemic happened in 20.
Yep. Stayed
in Trinidad 20, 21, 22. You know, 2 years, got my citizenship, built a little shack on some piece of land, rites of passage, you know, built community, understood that it was about building. And this is what I go back to, is like, yo, okay, we know that we all need each other. We can help each other. You give, I give, you eat, I eat. And we also know that knowledge is something people want. And me coming from America, first world or technology-driven place, I have knowledge of something that's being forced upon the people during the pandemic. This was the first time a lot of people needed to be online and needed to do things that they haven't been able to do before. So I became valuable to certain people. And I realized that was another moral standard. It's like, okay, people respect value. People respect, you know, like, what do people really respect? What do people really value? What are the, you know, what do they really want? And one thing people want is survive. And if we all got to go online to survive now, keep the person that can help us get online, you know? Yeah. Right. So I became a little commodity to certain people. And I love just being a part of a community. This is where I know now it's like, okay, I want to be a part of a community. I want to feel value. I want people to be like, yes, he has something. Let's bring him around. You know, and so then you work harder to keep this standard up and just keep working harder. So exercising because I came valuable to people that exercise, because now we're pushing like, yo, pandemic living, you know. So I went hard on the exercise and filming it and documenting it, and then growing food, hooked up with a farmer, documenting the life of a farmer, because this was his time too.
Yeah.
the pandemic was his time to shine. Like, now everyone respected everything he did more on a level because he was the one who had the most harvest.
Okay.
You know? During the pandemic, all the farmers, and then during the Caribbean, everyone started their kitchen garden. So now everybody needed the knowledge of the farmer. You know, how do you get your soil? What do you do with this? How do we, you know? So things just became more aligned of like my mission is like what I can do with the photography, what I could do with the filmmaking. I could tell stories of indigenous culture. I could tell stories of knowledge.
Yeah.
And so that just became a side passion. It's like a passion, like, okay, this is purpose, you know? Okay, now you have some purpose as what you can do with your film. And it's different because no one else is doing it. I feel like in Black American, African American.
It's not getting shown. If there are people doing it, it's definitely not being shown.
And that's too, like, and that's why I appreciate you, Chris, you know, because it's like, and we're all egotistical. Like, look at me right then. I'm saying no one else is doing it. I want to feel like I'm the only one doing something, which goes back to like, yo, sometimes we are just lacking. We're insecure and we're lacking stuff.
Well, I think the beauty of humanity and that I appreciate is like we live in our worlds, and so that in my real life experience, no one's doing what you're doing.
Right.
I also I want to let people know out there though that y'all need to get me more stuff. That like I'm ignorant because I don't read the newspaper anymore. I don't watch any of the major news outlets. I look at updates. I'm somewhat aware of what's going on. I don't deal with any major institution, any universities, any museum systems. As I just realized the other night, yo, I rap a lot. Like I got new joints, though. I'm gonna be dropping a lot of music this year, but I'm so uninvolved in rap. I don't market my shit at all. I don't tell anyone. I don't go anywhere. I don't hang out with nobody who's on. Like if I go to a show and so-and-so from whatever, I leave before they're part of the show. And it's like, it just hit me like, hold on, bro. I'm like the most involved to be totally uninvolved at all.
Right.
And so that means I don't know what's actually going on. I have to recognize that like I've kept myself secluded for the last couple of years. So it's not to dismiss or any way to say that like you aren't the only one doing it. It's just that I don't even know what's happening in the stuff that I do know about. Like, let alone things like who's getting up in the van and going through like the Volta region. You know, you're the only person I know who did that.
Yeah, and hopefully the world would see. So this is the process of like, now how do we distribute? How do we show?
So that was going to be my next question. In order for people, how do people see the value in that experience? Do you think people care about you as a black man and your personal journey experience in going to Africa? And do you think people care about what the people there have experienced that you're covering, especially if it's not the tropes they're used to seeing?
It's a great question, just because it makes me think, like, what do I think people care about? And as an artist, you're always telling yourself you never think about what people care about, you know? But somewhere deep in your mind, you're like, yo, people have to care about festivals. So really, my approach to Ghana was festivals, and everything I went to was either a festival or... And this is where you create, because I think indigenous festivals, modern day festivals are what came off of indigenous festivals, which are gatherings of people celebrating, you know, playing their instruments. You have food, you have the elders there, you have the youth and the babies, and there's a community factor, and the marketplace too, in case people want to exchange goods. And so, you know, that's a festival in African terms of the festival I went to, one of the festivals I went to. And then, of course, you have the modern day festival, you know. I went to Black Star Line Fest, and it was dope. Also went to Voices, which was Aja Monet, and she did it with, she brought out Angela Davis.
Dope.
Yeah.
And then outside of that, you then traveled up and...
So I met some, you know, just through the spirit. I met some people at Accra Mall, and these were black men who left America and now live in Ghana. And just through respecting my elders, honoring my elders, understanding that the elders know which way to go. Me, as an egotistical youth, I just think I could get there faster. And even under European ideology, I feel like in order for me to have some value, I have to show that, you have to get there faster. Even in under American standards, like the younger you are to being the best you are, the youngest to do this, the youngest to do that.
Well, I'm interested in this, and I'll answer it also. But do you think people see your value?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I can't answer that question because is money value? Money is value, right? So unless you have a lot of money, do you think you're valuable? But on the flip side, I feel like people think I'm valuable because they want me around. That sometimes people think I'm valuable because I may raise the vibrations and the energy because I'm a humble servant. That's just that's something I always ask myself, But also, I'm a loner. Like, I know myself. I don't really have too many friends. And also, I really took on the ideology of Kobe Bryant when he talked about, like, friends. And he called it Kobe friends. And it's like, we're on a mission. We have something to do with our life. Like, you gotta go back and listen to him the way he talks about, like, he's focused on his craft. I'm focused on my craft. Like all my friends are artists who are focused on their craft, and we're all doing what we need to do. And there are times of joy. Of course, there's times of joy. The music is joy. I'm a photographer and filmmaker. Every joy was going to the show, like going to the dopest show and getting that front row seat, but also having the responsibility to capture something. You're there for a reason. So, I was really just happy just being somewhere and having something to do.
Yeah. I mean, I asked about the value questions. I think as an artist, I'm constantly trying to understand what I expect out of it. I'm constantly trying to understand the value I hold, like, for myself, or like how much time and money I put into the stuff that I do versus what I think I'm getting out of it. What other people find resonating or like find... like that has some real connectivity, because like I'm definitely not a person that makes art with the expectation a lot of people will like it. It's not kind of the art that I make, but I also do want there to be an emotional connectivity to where even if they don't like it, it is plucked a chord, or it has pulled a string, or it has kind of tapped the wall on something that needed to shake a little bit. And I've lost any interest in people that never did what I'm trying to do, trying to tell me anything about it, which then removes kind of concept of value, because then like value, worth, almost like commodity of me doesn't make me feel good. And so when I think about like my art, like I know if there's $1,000 budget and they pay me $50 and a person that didn't do nothing gets $950, I don't like it. I don't feel valued when that happens. But I also rap for no money all the time. But when I know there's money involved, then to me, I do come up with some equation of like what's fair or equitable or something. But
rap is a different beast. Like rap is not photography, because you do photography too as well, right?
With those things, it's easier because there's an industry standard. When I first started shooting, I asked people who I knew how much they charged,
right? And
I just kind of undercut them.
Yeah, and I think that's why you have to put things in sections, because even this idea of filmmaking, that's always been like, you have to have money to do it.
Yeah.
So we're trying to, and you just choose the life you want to live. This is why also the farmer was the original artist. I come up with theories and ideologies like, the farmer was the original artist because he had food, he had shelter, he had clothing, he had everything he needed, and he had time to create something else. Mm-hmm. So even more so, if we have this goes back to you, discipline. You said you could give up coffee and cigarettes and all these things.
I can't.
No,
I mean, I have given up coffee. I have given up alcohol.
Yeah.
Almost. Oh shit! What's today? In another couple of days, it'll be It doesn't matter. Over 4 years and whatever months.
Congratulations.
But yeah. You know, I had cancer, so that's it. Wasn't
Some
really
people have cancer and
my
never make
choice.
the change. You know, right? Like.
But I would definitely. I'm also the wrong person to ask about stuff.
Yeah.
Because I know for a fact that your body can be different than you ever thought it would be, and so certain things that you think are mental aren't. And you really don't have control. Your body at some point is going to have to change in order for you to change. There are other things, though, that are totally just in the mind. That as soon as you scare the shit out of yourself enough, you're done. There are other things where no matter how much you scare yourself, you're addicted. And you have to learn not to hate yourself while you fight addiction. And recognize that, yes, you can win and lose at the same time. That you can be doing better than you've ever been while still not stopping. And so I'm definitely in the boat though of the first thing in the like I want my life to be different is definitely commit to it, go hard, and when people aren't supportive, get the hell away from them. And then that's hard because you need support. Like when you're doing major life change, you need support. Unless the change is I need to learn how to do shit on my own. And you know, and so it's weird in that I don't think it's easy to try to push against whatever the status quo is. I don't think it's easy to say I'm not going to be driven by the same kind of exploitative nature. I'm not going to take the method of the colonist in order to fight the colonist. But I'm also in the place of like, yo, dog, like the type of cancer I had like kills people. Like not just 10% of them, not just 20% of them. Like, I don't talk to people about the percentage of people that don't live. So
you were scared?
I'm not scared. I'm on some, like, it can't be scarier than that.
Yeah.
Like the idea of, like, yo, we shouldn't push or we shouldn't try what's never been tried no longer makes sense to me. The notion that, like, I should listen to colonists, liars, exploiters, thieves, any of that shit does no longer make sense. Like my notion of what is possible in life has expanded a lot. And the notion of like what you never imagined can happen in a week.
Because you came this close to death.
Positive or negative. I mean, and I know other people are like close. Like I wasn't stage 4, but I'm stage 3. I was on treatment. But the reality, I think, of like the ability for you to commit to something, an ability to like decide something will be important, has a lot more power than I would have recognized 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. Like the human ability to form new habits, and watching older people, watching my mom, it's like 80 something, change and like form new habits.
Really?
Yeah, but she
proud
had
to her, yo, and she's a special woman. Well,
again, she had kidney failure, and so certain what I'm saying is
still don't change.
So I'm interested in the like. What the luck is, because I don't know if that's purposeful. I don't. So anyone looking at me like, yo, Chris, you changed. That's not. It happened to me. It's like, but I then know like the other parts you have to do up here. But watching like my mom, like it took things happening to her where
to
like
make her change.
It changes, and so I'm fascinated on the how to do the change before you're scared to death. That's basically how long this long ramble was like. How the fuck to create the world you want around you before you're scared to death
to do it.
Yeah.
Don't ask me. I mean, because you can't ask me that question because I've always been like. I've always just thought like you're supposed to make the world, like you're supposed to do this shit. I've always been thinking in my mind like